Today, you're going to discover a great way to save you time and money at your church. Are you ready? Because it's time.
You're listening to the Church Digital Sidekick Podcast, part of the TCD Podcast Network.
Hey heroes, my name is Tom Pounder, and this is the Church Digital Sidekick Podcast. This is the podcast where I bring on ministry leaders and we talk about how you can do ministry more effectively in this very digital and online world. And today I bring in Josh Burnett. He's a guy that, as you'll discover in the podcast, we do have a history together in some way. I won't give it away quite yet, but we're talking about something he is doing right now with his company, and it's called Sermons.Tech. And it's a great tool that you can use for your church and your ministry to save you time, save you money, and save you a lot of stress. No lie. What they're doing at Sermons.Tech is so fantastic, and it's a great way for you to take what you're doing on Sunday morning or Sunday night with your children's ministry or youth ministry and really implement it throughout the week in a variety of different ways. So I bring on Josh to talk about exactly what it is and what it looks like and how you can do it. But before we get into the interview, I want to highlight the Church Digital. At the Church Digital, we've got a ton of great resources for you and your online ministry, whether it's metaverse ministry, whether it's phygital ministry, digital, or strictly just online ministry with your live streaming. We've got tons of blog posts, podcasts, coaches, and cohorts who would love to walk alongside of you to encourage you and to help you. So if you've never checked out the Church Digital, go to thechurch.digital today. All right, so without any further ado, let's get into the conversation with Josh Burnett. All right, with me right now is Josh Burnett. Josh, how are you?
I'm doing great. Thanks, Tom.
Now, what people don't know is that Josh and I have kind of been like ships passing in the wind of sorts, because as I was coming on staff at New Life Christian Church in Chantilly, Virginia, Josh had just left there to go plant a church. And so it was kind of funny. Like I always heard Josh's name, and obviously we've met tons of times. We've seen each other at Exponential and other places. But Josh, for anybody who doesn't know who you are, why don't you share a little bit about who you are and what you currently do?
Sure. Yeah. So yeah, we did pass I remember I think I met you once as you were kind of coming in at New Life, and then we just connected and whatnot since then. But yeah, so I was at New Life in Chantilly, Virginia for almost 4 years as a campus pastor there, and a couple other roles, discipleship, that type of thing. And then actually went there to learn how to start new churches, because New Life starts, the most churches of any church that I know in terms of their emphasis and focus on church planting. And so my wife and I, and at that time, our 9-month-old daughter, moved to Annapolis, Maryland to start a church. And so we moved there in 2009, started a church called Revolution. And we led that church until the end of 2018, when we stepped out of leading that church to start a tech company, actually, which sounds so weird to say out loud, honestly. But that tech company is called Flourish, and Flourish. The whole idea behind Flourish really was we wanted to help people volunteer in their city more effectively. Our church did a lot of that. We had a goal that every person that said, "This is my church home," would be volunteering in our city, our community, in a role that kind of took their skills and abilities and gifts and put it in conjunction with an organization who they were wildly passionate about. And so we had seen what happened when that happened in the church. And then we had run a whole bunch of analog experiments to match people up with nonprofits in the right role, and seen what happened when people got into that right role with a nonprofit. They were, 20 times more effective than somebody showing up for all the right reasons, but not being in the intersection of their passion and expertise as a volunteer. And so we stepped out to start that tech company thinking, we've planted a church. How hard can a tech company be? I can't code, but who cares? We'll find people that can. And so anyhow, it was a rough road for the first 2 years. A little bit of hubris led to some pain and humbling. And we learned a whole bunch of really great lessons through it. God's hand was on us in the midst of all of that. And this is a long version of the story, but at any rate, we ended up building out kind of an operating system for nonprofits that really optimizes the way that volunteers and nonprofits work together to make an impact. And along the way, we were building AI tools into the platform. And so we're having all these conversations about these AI tools, and then GPT comes out. And so like late last year, we're playing around with it, like just goofing off, making tools and, just fun little experimental tools and how we could use it inside the platform. And then basically one of our team members came to me and was like, hey, I got this idea. What if we created an app that people could like choose podcasts, and it would, automatically like import those podcasts and give them a summary of that podcast episode. And you could, charge a buck a podcast or something like that. I was like, that's a brilliant idea. And then it like dawned on me, and I was like, oh my gosh, I know what we could do. We could use AI to summarize sermons and create small group leader guides that are insanely excellent. And we could do it really fast, because actually at New Life, I would write sermon-based conversation, like, group guides with questions and stuff based on the sermon. And man, I never felt like I did a good job of it. It always took about 30 times longer than I felt like it should have. And I just felt like, oh my gosh, like this is like, I'm putting something out there that's, based on somebody else's sermon. It just feels like so weird, vulnerable for me, vulnerable for them. And I don't even know what's going to happen with these conversations. And so we started experimenting with that idea, and pretty quickly got some feedback from some churches that like, this is really good. It's better than what our humans can write, which is kind of the genius of a large language model, right? It can summarize and synthesize things so well. And so that was kind of the beginning of Sermons.Tech, which is the company that we've now started as like an additional company to flourish. So anyhow.
Yeah, that's awesome. Okay, so I got some questions for you. Starting up, so like my background was student ministry. However, I always felt like God was kind of leading me into online ministry because I was so fascinated with computers growing up. I, remember erasing my parents' hard drive on our IBM PS2 when I was a teenager, not just fooling around with stuff. Did you have a passion for computers and technology, and that's why you kind of started your company and moved away from Revolution?
Yeah, so I've always been fascinated with technology, kind of like you. Like it's always been something that it's never been something I've been formally like educated in, but I've like done a lot of work to educate myself, and I just am really intrigued by the possibilities of it.
Yeah.
And so I mean, basically I kind of, Sarah, my wife, and I both sort of ended up in church planting, having this weird reputation as like the people to ask about what the newest, coolest app was.
Cool.
And so I have a bunch of friends who would be like, hey, we hang out like 2-3 times a year or whatever. They'd be like, what's the newest app? What's the coolest thing? Like, fill me in, what's going on? And so that's kind of like just sort of our bent on that front. And yeah, honestly, like in terms of stepping away from leading Revolution, it had everything to do with the fact that I felt like God was calling us to this thing that could make the church more effective and empower the church to really become what I believe the church is supposed to be, which is people who are bringing heaven to earth by the way they love those around them. So yeah,
that's awesome. Well, and then so you started Flourish, and then you said the first few years was a little bit of a struggle, but then let's just be honest, the pandemic hit. Did that help accelerate stuff? How did that help? I mean, as weird as that sounds, I'll just go back to say Jeff Reed was doing online ministry for so long, and it was a struggle back and forth with him, but then the pandemic hit and things just accelerated. Did you experience that too?
Sort of. So I'll try to condense this part of the story as much as I can and keep it short. But basically, we raised a round of funding, hired a development shop to build our first product. And in January of 2019, they were supposed to deliver a product and they did not. And we had spent every penny. We didn't pay ourselves out of it or anything. We spent every penny of the money we raised with this shop. And so, January 2019, all of a sudden we're in this position where we have no more funds. We had raised a second round, but it was predicated on this being a product we could go out and sell. And so all of our investors, except for one, backed out. And so, we had like a tiny little bit of funding to be able to keep going. And so then the pandemic hits, and where it did actually accelerate us pretty dramatically is I was freaking out. I was like, man, what are we going to do? Like, we stepped out of the only thing that I have any qualification in this world to do, like to be paid for. And, and we really felt like God was calling us to this. And so what are we going to do? And so I basically just started networking, and I got connected with a number of different Christian developers from across the country, who then like expanded that network. And we started tapping into people who were passionate about the mission of and Flourish is a for-profit, but they were passionate about what it was. And so they were willing to jump in and help us for free and basically volunteering. And so that was kind of how we actually really got networked into the tech world, from a professional perspective. And it's led to us being able to, we've done a bunch of consulting with nonprofits over the last few years to kind of fund our development plan.
Yeah, and see, what I love about what you're doing with Flourish, and then also now with Sermons.Tech, is that your heart has always been to help churches, help people, help nonprofits. And I think God's really enabling you to do that now with just the different things that you're offering. So as we get into Sermon.Tech, talk to me a little bit about AI stuff. I love how you were kind of experimenting with it. What got you interested in AI before the explosion of AI?
Yeah, so there's a very specific example for that that I am happy to share. So one of the things as we were consulting with nonprofits that we realized was most of them need pretty dramatic work to be done to their website in order to actually engage volunteers. And so we had come up with this templated website that was like basically it had the instructions in, like, for every bit of it. The instructions for how to like make this your own website were written. So like your hero image at the very top with the line that says, it would say the instructions for like what should go here. And it would walk them through that process. We couldn't get nonprofits to use it because who has time when you're on a, you're on a mission. You don't have time to stop and be like, well, we got to market this mission. Like, nobody wants to do that. And so I was like, man, what if we could use AI to like read their existing website, take some of the content that we're getting from them as we're interacting with them, and automatically generate a better website. And so that's how we ended up sort of like starting to think about AI. And then we built a few other tools that were text message based. And so we were messing around with like, can we make these text messages like truly like aligned to this person and who they are and how they would say it, and like the relationship between this person and who they're texting. Those tools were for like fundraising. So it was like invitations to like join them in the mission of the organization by donating on a monthly basis, that type of thing. So we were playing around with a lot of that stuff, trying to figure it out. And then GPT came out and it was like, this is next level, stuff. So
that's great. Do you use GPT or do you use some other platform?
We use several different large language models. We use OpenAI tools for a significant amount of what we do. We also use Claude from Anthropic. We use another one called Assembly that has multiple different LLMs built into it, or large language models. I don't think I've said that yet, but yeah. And then a whole bunch of others that are there's so many models now that are, there's a whole open source market for that. And so, yeah, and working on, training our own stuff and that type of thing. So
that's cool. I actually use Claude a lot. I like it. It's simple and it's free. At least the version I have is free, but it works for me. And so, okay, so let's get into the Sermon.Tech stuff. I love this idea because what we've seen at my church at New Life is that when we actually take our sermons and cut them up in video segments, we're able to reach a whole different group of people and whatnot. But what I love about what you're doing is you're not doing that. You're making some take-home stuff here and really incorporated into a large, like you really are taking the Sunday sermon and finding ways to incorporate it throughout the week. So talk to me. I know you mentioned it a little bit before, but let's unpack this a little bit more. Talk to me a little bit about the benefits of this and how we can really use this as a church.
Yeah, yeah. So, I was a lead pastor for 9 years, preaching, 40 sermons a week, a week. No, 40
Yeah.
sermons a year.
Yeah.
And you would, I would pour my heart and soul into that sermon. I would never feel like it was actually done before I preached it, which was always annoying to me. But I would spend a significant amount of time every week developing that sermon. We'd spend time thinking through the series, and so much of that is about the people that you're serving and who is in the room and who you're trying to reach, and that type of thing. And so there's so much effort and energy that goes into it. And let's say you preach 30 minutes, or maybe you're preaching 40 or 45 or something like that, like, then it's done.
Yeah.
It's done. And like, yeah, you might have like small groups that are talking about it, but if a human is writing your questions, I'd like, this is my bias at this point, but I'll just like flat out say it. Like, if a human's writing your questions, it's probably not as engaging as it could be. And I mean, I always felt like that with, Brett's sermons and the other pastors that preached at New Life. Was like, man, I don't feel like I'm doing this justice. There's so much work that goes into this thing. And the beautiful thing about a large language model is you can take that sermon and you can turn it into, I mean, at this point, we've got like 15 different things that we can turn a sermon into, and we're adding more all the time. And so yeah, I mean, it's the ability to say, oh, we can create a blog from this sermon, or we can break this sermon into 3 different blogs, or hey, we actually do video clips now. So
Oh, nice.
yeah, you could actually, you could actually like have it automatically generate video clips that, and also social posts that are that part's not actually live, the social post, but that's coming real soon for those video clips, so that you can get it out there more broadly. You can turn it into devotionals. You can turn it into, I mean, there's just so many uses for that thing. And so, when we first started doing it, I was listening to a lot of people debating about, can AI write sermons and all that. And I was like, you know what, like, let's develop something that I don't think very many people are going to be arguing with, because they're going to be so floored by how good it is at this, that they're going to, they're going to be like, yeah, of course we want to use this. So yeah.
Well, and I also think too, regardless of whether or not AI is writing this or not, I mean, the reality is that, and this is what I've discovered with all curriculum, like, regardless of what curriculum I use as a student minister for all the years, I never just presented it as is. I had the human element, the Tom element, say, how can I reword this to communicate
Yep.
effectively to my audience? So even though AI may word something, a blog post a certain way, it doesn't mean you have to use it verbatim that way.
Yeah. Yep.
What I love about AI is that it gives me something I can look at and say, okay, what do I need to tweak here? What I need to, it gives me a starting point.
Yep.
And the second thing it does is it saves me a ton of time. And
100%.
that's what I see with Sermon.Tech. It saves, you can do, you said, how many different things does Sermon.Tech do right now?
There's about 15 right now. And I mean, we have major feature launches coming in the next 2 months that are going to be just mind blowing. Like, and a lot, like, our whole idea is the job of a pastor is to make disciples who can make disciples who can make disciples. And in the American church, there's so many distractions from you being with people as a pastor.
Yeah.
You have to, I mean, there's so many distractions, and we can remove an enormous amount of that simply utilizing a tool that is better at it than most of us are going to be at any of it, if not all of it. So, it's a tool that really can allow the pastors and staff of the church to focus more intentionally on people, and frankly, even understand the people that they're trying to reach more effectively. I mean, it's excellent at helping you understand the people who are in your church better. So yeah.
Yeah, I love this because, again, like you just said, like, we all got into ministry not to do ministerial things or admin things
Reels.
or
Yeah.
have office hours and all that kind of stuff. We got in ministry to change people's lives, to help impact our lives were changed. We want to help people experience Jesus and commit their life to Christ. And yet we get bogged down by the admin stuff. With Sermon.Tech, you're taking so much stuff off of our plates, and for a fee, which is, again, is cheaper than hiring somebody to be it on staff.
Yeah.
We're able to get so many different resources that can help us take our Sunday message or anything that we have going on and help us implement it throughout the week and really be a really asset to our ministry.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, the average discipleship pastor right now is telling us that it's saving them between 4 and 8 hours of work a week. And that's just for that one tool of the discussion guide, sermon-based discussion guide that we create. We also just rolled out this new feature that if you want to go check it out, it's free, costs you your email, which we will not harass you, I promise. But you put in your email, and we call them prompt buttons. And so what we discovered is most pastors have no clue the possibilities of what AI can actually do for them and how it can save them time. So small group season is coming up. So you've got your launch coming. The first prompt button on the page, you click it, and you put in your church name, you put in your launch date for your small groups, and you put in the kinds of small groups you have. It will write a 4-week-long communication plan with everything you need to be able to really, really effectively communicate about the launch of small groups and why people need to get involved in those small groups. So it's got stage announcement wording. It's got email, midweek email announcement wording with image recommendation built into it. It's got social media posts built in. It's the click of a button and you're done. How long would you spend on doing that? I would spend a day trying to put the communication plan together, and then I'd forget half of it. I'd forget to do half of it,
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And let's be honest, us as ministers, we're not always the best communicators. And so this kind of really helps us do that. And
Yeah.
again, as you're talking about this, I love this because you are helping design this, and your team is helping design this, and you were a minister. You
Yeah.
know what it's like. You're not just some tech guy saying, "Oh, I think pastors are going to like this." But no, you were in the trenches. You know exactly what it's like to do all these things. So that's why I think this tool will be so helpful for so many churches around.
Yeah. It's we were having fun with Flourish stuff, and we're still having fun with Flourish stuff. But when we realized what we could do for churches, and most of my closest friends are still in pastoral ministry. And so, I've got this really awesome test group that we can run experiments with. But there's nothing that brings me more joy than being oh, I'm going to help you make more disciples. Come on. Yeah, it's just fun. It's so much fun.
Yeah, I love this. Okay, so there's so much that you can do on this. How can people learn more about this? What do they need to do?
Yeah, so you can go to Sermons.Tech. So just the word sermons with .tech after it, and that you'll land on our our landing page. We've got examples of the kinds of content that are created on that page. We actually need to update it with 14 things that we've added, not really 14, but several things that we've added to it. You can go play with the prompt buttons directly from that page. So there's at the top right, the menu bar, it has prompt buttons up there, and you can go play with those to just get an idea of the kinds of things that AI can actually do. And that's really why we created them, was to show pastors what they can do. And now we have all these prompt buttons that live inside the platform that are, that just take your ability to, do all kinds of things. So the same thing we can do with the sermon on Sunday. We're going to roll out in the next couple months a children's ministry tool that does the same thing for small group leaders for their children's ministry side of things, as well as a whole bunch of incredible tools for parents to be able to tap into. Here's what my kids learning on Sunday. Here's how we're going to talk about it this week. All kinds of stuff. So yeah.
Dang, I love that. Seriously, one of the things that we're experimenting more with our church is at our church, again, is exactly what you said. How can we mobilize parents to be more equipped to be discipling their kids? And so what you're doing is, this isn't just for adults and Sunday school and all the adult ministry stuff. This is for children's ministry too.
Yeah. Yeah. Children's ministry, communications for your church. So we're building out all kinds of communication tools, and we'll have a whole social media functionality where it'll be connected to your social accounts, and it'll literally, you'll build your schedule and it will generate the content for everything you're going to post about. And eventually we'll even have image generation built into this so that you can, have it generate images and that type of thing. And you can basically like set it and go, yep, okay, cool. I've reviewed this. One thing we say about everything we create is it's 90% done. The goal is not to give you a product that you can ship right out of the gate. You are the final filter. You've got to have eyes on it. But like the more you use our tool, the more it gets to know your voice and the better it can speak for you. So if you go back and upload 100 of your old sermons to the platform, it will literally sound more and more and more like you in everything that it creates, and like your church's voice and everything it creates.
That's awesome. Okay, wait. So I missed it the first time that you go around, but you're doing images as well. Go ahead.
Not yet. We're working on that. The image stuff, you mentioned this in your last podcast, and I was like, yeah, it's tough. Like, it's really hard to teach other people to use as well. There are a bunch of so we're working on making it user friendly for the church. One of the things we found is like, it's for social media, it's a little easier to generate stuff because you can generate content that is, like a person staring out at the ocean, for like a contemplative, post about like, hey, we talked about this aspect of prayer this week. And, that's not that hard, but, you don't want to, it's actually kind of a thing that we're excited about. And I'm interested in what you think about this, Tom, because for children's ministry stuff, there's a whole lot of risk in posting any images of your children's ministry at all, like real images. But we can generate fake images of people that look real but aren't in your church and aren't real and aren't, and make it look like, hey, this came from our children's ministry, but we're not actually hurting anyone or harming anyone in, putting this content out there. So, or putting anyone at risk, I guess I would say. So yeah, I don't know what you think about that, but that's like a use case that we're like, how's the church going to respond to this? Are they going to freak out or not? So anyhow, we're getting it though.
Well, I can tell you this as an online guy and a social media guy at my church. Again, I've seen two things. One is, you're right, we can't use people's faces, the kids' faces and whatnot. There's lots of reasons why we can't do that. But I also know that people respond to real people doing real things. I always like to say that. They like to see real people doing it. They don't like to see the stock photos. So if AI, and I've seen AI generated pictures of people, they look really legit. In fact, there was an AI a person who was created on Twitter a few months ago that caused a lot of stir because they were saying a lot of crazy stuff and it looked like a real person. The AI interacted like a real person. I mean, it was really, really kind of crazy. But if an AI generation can create a person that looks real and doing real things, I think that really aids it because, again, stock photos, you can tell a stock photo from a stock. I mean, you can really tell them. So
yeah, absolutely. Yep.
So this is awesome. And again, I love it that you've got a lot of stuff already there. You're building more stuff into it, and you're going to continue to build stuff into it. So I would strongly encourage people, this will save, I can just tell you right now, this will save you a lot of time. It will save you a lot of money. And it'll save you a lot of stress to have something like Sermons.Tech to really kind of come alongside of you. So again, Josh, give me the website again, and then how else are you guys on social media at all?
Yeah, we are. So yep, Sermons.Tech is the URL. And then if you go to Facebook, we're on Facebook, Sermons.Tech, or at Sermons.Tech, sorry, is what I should have said. So no period in between. But yeah, same for Instagram, and then also we're on Twitter as well. So and I think we have a Threads account. I don't think we're using it very much. I don't think anybody's using their Threads account. But
I have I post a little bit on Threads, but I have a more of a wait and see kind of thing.
Yeah.
There's been, do you remember Clubhouse when that came out years ago?
Yes. Yeah, that went nuts.
Yeah, everybody was all in on Clubhouse, and and so I was like, oh, I'm gonna get all in, and then nobody's on it anymore. And so
flash in the pan.
Yeah. But what also Josh and I talked about in this before we hit record was I'm going to look at a way to get Josh on Being the Church Digitally Facebook group and do a demo of Sermons.Tech so that people can actually see it and be on it. So stay tuned for that. I'm going to have all this information in the show notes, so you definitely want to click on Josh's links, and then we can kind of go from there. But definitely check it out. I know Josh, again, we're ships passing and all that stuff, but I know enough about Josh that, and he's a legend at New Life still. And this
Oh,
is like 13 years later, he's still a legend at New Life. They still talk about him. So you definitely want to check it out. So Josh, thanks so much for being with me today.
yeah. Thanks for having me, Tom. I really enjoyed it. It's fun.
All right, so what did you think of the interview? I'm not going to lie. I got off the podcast episode with Josh and I told him how blown away I was about how much Sermons.Tech does for your church or your ministry and for the price. The price is fantastic. It will save you money because you don't have to hire a staff person to do all this extra work. It will save you time because you don't have to do all the other things. You can focus on ministry more, and it'll save you a lot of stress because let's just be honest, implementing a social media strategy, taking sermons and cutting them up into pieces and sharing them on video platforms, or creating devotionals out of them, blog posts out of them, whatever it is out of your Sunday sermons, it saves you a ton of stress that you don't have to worry about that anymore. Sermons.Tech does it for you. So check it out. All the links are in the show notes. I'd really encourage you to do it. Again, as I said before, this is designed by ministers. So these guys know what other ministry leaders are going through. So again, check it out, Sermons.Tech. All the links are in the show notes. I would strongly encourage you to do that today. Don't waste another minute. Do it today. All right, heroes. Well, thanks so much for being with me today. As always, if you enjoy the podcast, go subscribe to it. It's on YouTube. It's on Apple. It's on Google. It's on all the other platforms. I'd love for you to be a part of that and subscribe to it. So every time these come out, you can get it coming right to you today. So subscribe to it then. All right, heroes. Well, I hope you have a great rest of your day, a great rest of your week. And until next time, have a great one.